Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers. It's a podcast where a group of friends share music with each other, an album at a time. Kind of taking turns, like a little book club for music, like I say every week. I'm Peter Rave, your man with no plan. Here with me is my team, my squad, my crew. We've got Brett.
I am the reincarnation of Paul Harvey, even though we were alive at the same time.
Yes.
Good day.
We've got Drew.
Who you calling friends?
Mm-hmm. And we've got Patrick.
Hello.
We're here to talk about music. We're here to talk about an album. The provider of the album this week is Brett. Brett, what have you brought forth to us?
I brought forth to us the album by Bad Religion, Stranger Than Fiction.
Yes. We're going back to Bad Religion, revisiting an old favorite. Drew, what was your expectations coming into this album?
Well, this being a Bad Religion album, so a band I'm familiar with, and being the one that sold, I think, the most, if memory serves, it was an album that, if Brett wanted to throw a softball, I think he succeeded.
Yes. And not a fast pitch softball either. Patrick, what were your expectations coming into this album?
I mean, I'm pretty familiar with it. It's Bad Religion. It's not my favorite Bad Religion album, but it's also still a pretty good Bad Religion album.
Yeah.
Still I don't know. I'm a weirdo, and we'll talk about it, but I don't mind some of the later stuff that most people are sort of like, God damn it, if it's after 1990, fuck it.
You're wrong, and so are they.
Yeah, considering this is 1994, so... I have to say, this, many albums, I think from the different genres from earlier, I haven't heard the album necessarily, but I've heard a couple of songs, even sung a couple of songs in karaoke by hook or by crook, and I believe at least one or two of them I play in Rock Band. So I'm familiar with songs off this album, and I'm familiar with Bad Religion, of course. Let's talk about the album musically. Brett, how would you describe this album musically? What would be the themes, elements that catch your attention?
Well, if you're more familiar with the early stuff, like the Suffer and the No Control years, it's going to sound a little different. If you know them from the Empire Strikes First era and around there, it's going to sound different as well. It's sort of an in-betweener. Where the band wasn't completely melting your face with everything, and the messages were a little more concise, but they weren't quite old man preachy. They were more just like weird stories. You still get pretty much the core group of guys that you would want to have in a Bad Religion album. Of the ones that I wanted to bring that were after Suffer and No Control, but before they got terrible. This was the easy one because it's the successful one, but there's Recipe for Hate is a fantastic record, but it does not have the stuff that you can sink your teeth into. This album has got some Tim Armstrong. I'm sorry, I normally leave my Tim Armstrong for saying pick it up when talking about sound systems or
Unity. It's
She's a bombshell. Yeah, but no, there's some of that, but not but that's not terrible. I just think Tim Armstrong as this character is kind of hilarious. The idea of Tim Armstrong is hilarious, but no, there's
Tim Armstrong in practice is often a little hilarious.
I like
Tim Armstrong as
the more real. The more real you make him, the less happy it is.
I gotta take Tim Armstrong theory next semester.
Yeah. To 102. Yes. But yeah, this album has some pretty. It's a punk rock album, so it's not gonna be the most amazing thing. But there's some pretty good bass work. There's there's functional guitar that's going on, but that's not really what you come for. But you come for the singing, you get the raspy vocals and 4-part four-part harmonies.
4-port USB hubs.
That's right, gigabit. But they definitely do the harmonies. They do the thing where it's kind of like this weird cheesy thing that, hey, this is what punk rock became, a bunch of people singing in choruses and stuff. Like it's kind of a weird thing to look at on its of its parts, but like it really comes together, and this is by far one of the more polished albums because they had money.
Yeah. Drew, how would you describe this album musically?
Well, yeah, like Brett said and we alluded to, something in my throat. It's Bad Religion, but it's the hit one with money. They had money behind this album, and it shows in weird ways. To me, this album is something that sort of proves like, hey, as long as you give the band room and you don't try to force them into a box, and like they can still go to a label and still be the thing that they always were. You can still give them a bunch of money and still have a punk rock band that's punk rock, which I think is smart. That being said, this is Bad Religion, right? Like, it's a band that, like, at this point, if you are familiar with punk rock, it's a little hard to talk about without saying the things that everybody already knows. They're the band that inspired everyone, and I think this is, not everyone, I shouldn't say that, but, like, most of the punk rock you heard in the late 90s to early 2000s area was probably inspired, or probably owes a lot of its roots to this record in particular.
Or it might actually still be Bad Religion, and I'm sorry.
Man, like I said,
you were a kid.
Process of Belief wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. But the band started like in the 80s, like the early 80s. And so this is their 8th full-length album. They sort of knew what they were doing at this point. They knew what their sound was going to be. It was a brash, sort of in-your-face punk rock album. But, like we said, it had money. So it was cleaned up a bit, like, as far as the tonality goes. But they weren't teenagers anymore. It wasn't like a angsty, pure anger. There was more to the lyrics than I think some of their earlier albums had. And it sort of reflects in the lyrics, I think, just them getting older and sort of looking at the world a little different. Some might say that later on they got too old and then stopped looking at the world the same at all. But the musicality in it is tight. It's a solid record. But the thing I think that sometimes goes unnoticed, and I'm glad Brett mentioned it here.
Tim Armstrong. That's where all the money went.
Tim Armstrong. No, I was going to say the thing that goes unnoticed is Jim Lindbergh, but whatever. Hey, Pennywise. No, but a good punk band is a good punk band, but a great punk band, a lot of times to me, has an underlying bassist that's really good. A good punk band, the bassist is going to follow the root note and hit it in the same rhythm as the rhythm guitarist. Great punk band, there's going to be some bass work underlying that shines, and I think there's a lot in this album that goes to that point.
Patrick, how would you describe this album musically? What would be the themes elements that caught your attention?
This album sounds like 90s Bad Religion. It has a very distinctive sound. The way they were writing songs in this era, sort of, it's more polished certainly than No Control or Against the Grain or Suffer, but it's still pretty hard and pretty fast. I don't know what it is about how like this whole era of the band all kind of has a really distinctive sound, and it's not bad. Like, it's kind of great. But I like the first 3 or 4 tracks. I'm listening to this. I'm like, this sounds like 90s Bad Religion. And that's the only way I can describe it. It's like a lot of like popular-ish mid 90s punk rock. Like it's well recorded. It's well played. It's pretty cleanly put together. This, isn't garage era stuff, where, they're spending $80 trying to record a record. Like, money was put into this, but it also still has bite, still has edge to it. Like, they're not full on old man yet. They are.
Brian Baker wasn't in the band yet.
Yeah.
I got
They haven't-
jokes.
They haven't gone full old man yet. Like, they, after this, they got more old man, although I like some of it because I'm a weirdo.
I Marge grumbled at you, Drew. I'm sorry. But very dismissive of you.
Hey, they had some good albums with Baker. Like, they had some really good albums with Baker on them. You shut up.
Hey, I learned today from Ben Pack that Blink-182 has Travis Pastrana on drums. So,
Oh,
like, I'm willing to have fun time jokes about music.
Yes. I mean, yeah, he's an all-time great, Travis Pastrana.
Yeah, driving that dirt bike.
Yeah.
Well, now it's
Or-
rally cars because he hurt himself too bad with the dirt bikes.
He motors through his drum lines.
He was great in the Aquabats.
Yeah, that is neither here nor there. Let's talk about some of the key tracks. Let's do in on some stuff. Brett, what would be some of the key tracks that you would point out and zero in on?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of tracks, and there is some sameness. It is a band that has a thing, and they do. It's that weird sort of like this kind of sometimes has like country music licks, and it's not a progression that you normally hear in punk rock. But the ones that really stuck out for me were very Bad Religion songs, like The Handshake. It's a song that like I've always enjoyed. It's a pretty simple song, but like it has the rare punk rock bridge, like that's noteworthy. Like you don't always get more complex songwriting structures. It's also got some really fantastic bass work at the back end. Like they could have just walked the route and been lazy about things, but they didn't. One of the songs that like I remember most off of this album was Inner Logic, because it follows the classic Bad Religion formula, not unlike songs from earlier albums like American Jesus, where they layer in the harmonies at the end of the song. Inner Logic is especially raspy, and like the harmonies are like dead on. It's very clean. For being the very clean punk rock album is kind of a weird thing, but and even though it's like a song that they took from another album and put on this album because they're like, hey, that song's really good, we should have people actually hear it. 21st Century Digital Boy is sort of like one of the songs that if you know Bad Religion, you from an era that is the one that you heard. That is the one that they play at their shows last. It's kind of like the song itself is not a favorite, but it is a noteworthy track, to say the least.
Yeah, it is one of those songs I've sung in karaoke. 21st Century Digital Boy. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
So I'm going to jump to Stranger Than Fiction, the title track. I think that this track especially is something that like you sort of take notice to the bass, and the way it sort of plays with the rhythm and the like bounciness of it all, which is weird to say about a Bad Religion song, I think sometimes, but it has that to it, which I really, really like. Infected, it's the song. Like it's one of the better punk songs ever. This album came out in '94, and this has a bit of that like grunge tonality to it, but without being a grunge song, which I like because grunge gets up its own butt sometimes. It was like it had dark bits to it, which I think is really, really cool. And then Television, because I really like Tim Armstrong.
Hey everybody, I
Look,
got
man.
demo work done today. Yeah.
Yes.
Look, man, it's It's Op Ivy. Like,
Let me say a lot of P's and S's.
Yes.
I'm certainly not on a substance right now.
the, if you
I'm gonna
you
get
want,
bad
if you
emails
want,
from T Armstrong at Google.
Yeah.
if you want like peak like mushmouth messed up Tim Armstrong, listen to him try to rap in the Transplants, and then tell me how that works out for you.
I'm familiar. I'm very familiar.
We should do a Transplants album one time.
I'm cool.
No, please, no.
I don't want to hear
No.
Travis Pastrana.
Yes.
Okay, so note to self: if I do Blink 182 ever, bring the one before the other drummer got
Dude
kicked
Ranch.
out.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
bring Dude Ranch. I'll talk about Dude Ranch all day.
Dude Ranch,
Yeah.
Dude Ranch was a good fucking album. Cheshire Cat was a good fucking album
Oh,
too.
Yes.
Cheshire Cat, Buddha, like those were skate park albums. But yeah,
Yes.
well, on our punk rock side jag.
Yeah. But unfortunately, neither one of those albums are today's album. Let's get back on topic. Patrick.
It will be eventually.
From today's album, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Television featuring Tim Armstrong. Hey, it's Lint. It's Lint. Remember he used to call himself Lint? I still think that's funny. Yeah. But it's also just kind of a very fun song. Great guitar lick and a fun little guitar solo. I think it's like a really good example of why punk rock guitar solos are fun. They're usually like 12 seconds long. They get in, they get out, and they get the fuck out, and they keep going. That's just a pretty good song. And also, like, I think like everyone said, we all kind of have a special spot in our heart for Tim Armstrong and the dumb bands he's been in. Mostly Op Ivy, but occasionally Rancid.
Okay.
Not so much Transplants.
I like quite a bit of Rancid.
Yeah, Rancid's got some good shit. Hooray for Me. I really like the chord progression of that song. I don't know why. It's just nice. There's like, it doesn't do that punk thing where it only has 3 or 4 chords. It has like several more than that. And it's got another like really good little guitar solo, but the guitar solo's got this kind of, I would call it vaguely rockabilly tone to it. It's still a punk guitar solo, but it like has like, I don't know, the guitar tone just sounds vaguely rockabilly to me, and I liked it. And it's a fun song. And again, like an interesting chord progression, something that Bad Religion can do that a lot of bands of their era didn't bother to do. And then The Elephant in the Room, 21st Century Digital Boy. You can't not mention it. It's overplayed, but it's also a classic. And it's sort of, I think it is old people shaking their fists at millennials, but like 20 some years ahead of time.
Yeah, they're yelling at people's dads.
Yeah.
Like they're just, and it is ironic that same basic premise continues now. Kids these days,
it's a timeless idea, right?
Yeah, kids these days and their technology, they don't pay attention to anything. And it also just is like a really classic song. And again, like reading the story of why this got recorded and put on another album 4 years after it got put on another album, of just like, nah, he just kind of wanted it to be a hit. He thought it could be a hit. So he like played it again and it sounded really good. And then it was a big hit. It just, yeah, it is very much, you know, like some of those, like sometimes the band's biggest hit is like an okay song, but like you're missing a lot of stuff. Like here, it's like, no, it's a pretty great song. It's one of their more memorable ones for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, it's a good song. It's a memorable song. It's a one of the songs that I've sung karaoke for a reason, because it's a fun song to sing too. The other one being Infected, which is on this album, the other kind of big hit, which I've also enjoyed singing at karaoke, and I believe playing on Rock Band, if I remember correctly. I think it's also on Rock Band or Guitar Hero.
I think the thought of Bad Religion being on one of those games is kind of hilarious.
Yeah. It's on.
They are classic rock now.
But yes, they are. This album is older than you.
There's a
They're
cover
old.
of this song by a German trance group called Groove Coverage of
Why are we
21st
not
Century
covering
Digital.
that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Literally, the song was covered in 2006 as 21st Century Digital Girl by German trance dance group Groove Coverage.
hey, we're providing an educational service here.
I need to hunt that down when we're done recording.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
I hope it's in German too.
We will enjoy that. But that is neither here nor there. We're on topic here. We're talking about this album.
Super going off the rails.
21st Century Digital Boy. We're talking about this album. And we'll bring it back around the horn, talk about some conclusive thoughts. Drew, what will be your conclusive thoughts on this album as a whole?
To me, this is one of those bands where if you haven't heard them, at least some, you're living under a rock. If you're going to jump into them for the first time, this is probably the easiest way in, the easiest possible way in, to get what they are in a nutshell. Yeah, there's crazies out there like me, Pat, that sometimes will listen to this stuff that came after 2000, although I don't know what you're talking about. Empire Strikes First. But
I was in college. I really liked it. I just stuck with me. I fully recognize it's of its era, but it still sounds like Bad Religion.
This is sort of, in my opinion, like peak. This is where like their sound was solidified. They wrote a bunch of really good songs that had some, like, they're a punk rock band that have songs with some meaning to them. It's not just a bunch of power chords and yelling into a microphone. They say things that can be important. In fact, like, doing some research, they made the point in an interview that, like, when they named the band and made the symbol, they never thought like 20 years later they were going to be doing like phone interviews and like writing songs that they wished people would hear. They literally did it to piss people off as much as possible.
The best
That's
kind of
punk rock. That's goddamn punk rock.
Yeah.
That is the best kind.
If you're not trying to piss people off, you're doing it wrong.
Right, exactly. And I think that's, but saying that, I think that puts a lot of people away from it. They're like, oh, well, I do believe in one thing or another, so therefore they don't listen. And that's not, the band's not yelling at you. They're yelling at the bigger picture. And I think that's something that a lot of people should be able to get behind pretty easily. It says something, and it says something important in this day and age, whether you agree with it or not. And this album was really good at doing that in a lot of different ways. Plus it's fucking fun. Like, what else do you want from a punk rock album?
Yeah. It also the cool thing of like in our pre-discussions before the show on our chat, Drew was like, "Wait, didn't we do Bad Religion before?" And I pointed out that it was Against the Grain. But a cool thing to note that 21st Century Digital Boy was on that album as well.
So that's why it struck me. I was like, wait a second. I remember talking about specifically this song.
Yes.
Like,
but it sounded a whole lot worse and older.
Yes. So, you know, really cool little fun fact. Fun facts. Patrick, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
So we've done many albums from 1994. It's one of like the best years in music. I think it's safe to say there was enough great shit in 1994.
Say it ain't so.
I will not go.
Turn the lights
Sorry,
off.
I just Weezered into
Weezered into a blink.
Yeah.
But like this I think lives up to the standards of 1994 in music. Like it's part of that tapestry of just how fucking good stuff was. It isn't the best Bad Religion album. I think Against the Grain's way better than this, but it's hardly bad. It's real good. So, you know, if you listen to Against the Grain and you want more, this is a good place to go next. If you haven't listened to Bad Religion, listen to Against the Grain first.
It's better than bad. It's good. Yes. I think, yeah, this is a fantastic album. It's well used. It's well utilized. Bigger budget by a punk band. It's fun to listen to. It's cool to kind of like have it wash over you. It's well made. It has fun little surprises, and I think overall, yeah, I overall there's a lot of reasons why it's big and a lot of reasons why it's memorable. But yeah, Brett, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
Well, as a good product reviewer, I'm going to make the review of this album about me. This album was a skate park album, and I listened to it a ton. It is not my favorite album by them by a long shot. I'm very much I like my punk rock from the 80s. I like the earlier stuff. But this is an album that is like on the list of just listen to it, like understand what it is, know that it was a thing, and it's good to see like this is part of the path that led us to today, where these guys are all really, really old. But I think it has some timeless qualities to it, although it is very dated in some points. I think it is something that is easily digestible. It is inoffensive. Well, it's offensive, but it's not like terrible. So I think it's good hygiene to have a knowledge of this era of Bad Religion.
Yeah, Bad Religion, Stranger the Fiction.
They also Bad Religion punches up. That is an important thing about Bad Religion. Like they could be making fun of hillbillies, they could be like doing a bunch of stuff, but instead they punch up, and that is a thing that spoke to me about Bad Religion.
Yes,
but that is that, and this is this.
Yes. Now we get to the main event of the evening. We get to our haiku reviews, where we sum it all up in poetic form. Let's go with it. Drew, what is your haiku?
Punk rock pioneers, probably the one you know, and for good reason.
Patrick, what is your haiku?
1994 was a good year for music. This is one reason.
My haiku, almost forgot myself. A thoughtful punk jam, great musical energy. It's pretty darn good. Brett, what is your haiku?
Punk rock royalty, the most popular release, polished and raspy.
Those are our thoughts on Bad Religion, Stranger Than Fiction. Shared it with each other. You can of course find it on our Spotify playlists. Play Record Breakers the home game. Another way to play Record Breakers the home game is to give us your feedback. Comment on the show page or on the YouTube page. On the YouTube video, or email us at recordbreakerspodcast@gmail.com. Give us your thoughts, give us your key tracks, give us your haiku even, do all the things. On that Spotify playlist that to further your homework is going to be next week's record. And I believe that will be provided by Drew. Drew, what do you got for us next week?
Well, I've got an album that actually has a member of the band we just finished listening to. Who Greg Hetson makes a appearance on this album. It's a band I love a lot, that are actually getting all their original members back together, all three of them, and making another album. It's Magnified Plaid, also known as MXPX, with their album Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo.
Wow. Yeah. We're bringing Jesus into this.
Wow.
Yeah. Greg Hetson from Bad Religion was on an album that charted number 2 on the Christian rock charts.
Yes.
Think about that, guys.
Think about that.
Wow.
Yes. Wow. So enjoy that. That will be next week, but that is then and this is now. And you can of course find us all over the internet. Patrick is at The Swagger. Brett is at HibbityBibberd, HIBBI2YBIBBARD. Drew is at XDruciferX. I'm at PD Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com is our email. Rebelly.net for this and other shows. Rebelly TV on YouTube and other places. You can find us everywhere you can find podcasts. Like, share, subscribe, give us feedback. You do all the things. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Do that in a 4-part harmony.